Wow, what an extraordinary way to begin this morning's plenary. And it continues. It's my deep honor to now introduce our next speaker, who will be representing the National Parks Voice, the Director of the National Park Service, John Jarvis.
Thanks, Lieutenant Governor. That was really fantastic. We had the opportunity to spend some time together in the Mariposa Grove of Yosemite on a project, a centennial project, as a matter of fact, to restore that extraordinary park. And Catherine, thank you so much for your leadership here as well, and really, your willingness. Catherine serves on our advisory board for both the Urban Committee as well as our Centennial Committee. At some risk, as a political animal myself, of making a slight correction to the Lieutenant Governor's comment about Death Valley, and that is that we in the parks community knew it would bloom. It was no surprise to us. We know those seeds are there. And everyone in this room knows those seeds are there, that all they need is a little bit of nourishment, and they will blossom across the nation for all of the American citizenry to benefit from. And those blossoms are what we're here all to talk about, whether it's ecology or social justice, livable cities, and the like. So the National Park Service is a part of that. In 2016, the National Park Service will be 100 years old, and I will have served for 40 of those years. So I have a few opinions about that as a result. In that time, I've had some extraordinary experiences, just some incredible, awe-inspiring events and places that really represent sort of the core values of us as Americans. One of those recently occurred when I joined President Obama and tens of thousands of people in Selma, Alabama, to commemorate the Civil Rights March between Selma and Montgomery. The President began his incredibly passionate speech with, and I quote, "There are places and moments in America where this nation's destiny has been decided. Many are sites of war: Concord, Lexington, Gettysburg, Appomattox. Others are sites that symbolize the daring of America's character: Independence Hall, Seneca Falls, Kitty Hawk, Cape Canaveral, and Selma." By the way, each of those places is managed by the National Park Service, which I loved hearing that list. And our job is to keep that story alive and keep it relevant to today's challenges. A year before Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, he spoke, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." Now, I've always believed that it is the responsibility of the National Park Service to give people hope and optimism and a voice. The very creation of the national park idea was really an expression of faith in the future. It was a pact between generations, between the past, present, and future. Our mission is to conserve these places unimpaired for future generations. And that idea has spread around the world. And when it came back, it was different. It had evolved. It had changed. The founders of this idea it really was incredibly innovative at the time, but it was a different time and a different era. New times demand new eras and new approaches. So 2 weeks ago, we kicked off the Centennial campaign, Find Your Park. And it's a provocative message that encourages people to shed their misconceptions about the National Park Service or even what a park is. It is really about deepening the public's understanding not only about the national parks, but all parks. That a park can be a place, can be a feeling, can be a state of mind. And it suggests that the future does not rest solely on us as land managers, but also on the advancement of ideas and ideals. Our future is dependent upon the connectedness we find between the places of wild and the places of urban, between history and its relevance to the issues of today, between preservation and economic and social needs, and between all of us that care about both the natural and the built environment. So as the 100th anniversary of the National Park System approaches, there's a lot of thought and debate around relevancy, not only to the national parks, but to the entire park system. And certainly that's going on in municipal environments and state park circles, and certainly here in California as you rethink the great California state park systems. It was at the City Parks Alliance 2 years ago that the National Park Service attended, maybe in more numbers than we'd ever done, certainly not the level of numbers we have here today. But it was there that really inspired us to rethink our role in the urban space. So we launched Urban Matters, an engagement process that reached out to hundreds of park leaders and practitioners and urban park districts, and many were actually quite surprised of how urban the National Park Service actually is. For instance, 40 of the country's 50 most populated urban areas have national parks inside those cities. 1/3 of all National Park Service sites are located in urban areas, and 36% of the park visitation occurs in our urban parks, with Golden Gate being the #1. We also do a lot of programs of historic preservation work. We did $66 billion in historic preservation tax credits across the country. And we have over 30 programs that do things like restore recreational facilities, re-enliven rivers, do trail building and youth programs as well. So it's really exciting that we are here, and we're here in force to be a part of this movement, to make our cities healthier, more resilient, and more connected to their natural and cultural heritage as well. So I'm really pleased here today to announce the urban agenda for the National Park Service. And there's holding up a copy of it here for you to see, but it's real. And I have a lot of these kinds of plans that sit on my shelf in my office. I actually collect them. I think when I came on as the director, I said, we are not going to just produce a lot of new plans that no one ever implements. We're going to take a strategic approach to actually implementation of all of these kinds of things, and the urban agenda being right at the top of our list. It is really an outward-looking, collaborative approach of working with our partners. And the key component of this really is this relevancy question, being relevant to all Americans. So we've identified 10 cities, 10 model cities, where we are going to work on this concept of one National Park Service, where we integrate all of our programs and our presence in parks as well. And these cities all offer different kinds of challenges. We have cities where we actually have a park, like San Francisco and Golden Gate. We have cities where we are adjacent to a major urban center, like Saguaro National Park in Tucson. And then there are cities where we don't have any parks at all, but we have a lot of programs, like Detroit. So 10 cities have been selected. They're Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Jacksonville, St. Louis, Detroit, Tucson, and Richmond, California. And to really assist in the activation of this agenda, we developed a fellowship program which will deploy urban fellows to each of these model cities to serve as sort of interface with all of our programs and the urban community as well. So I'd like the urban fellows to stand up so you can see them. Please stand up, urban fellows, right here. So they will be in each of these cities. So spot them if you are from those cities and make a connection, because they're And they all volunteered to do this. It will be a fantastic adventure. I told them that I'm jealous. I would love to have done that early in my career, but I think it's going to be just really, really great work. The NPS Urban Agenda is part of the President's 21st Century Conservation Agenda that calls for full funding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. As you probably know, the President, Secretary Jewell, I, and the other land management agencies have made this a priority year after year after year. And we really do need Congress to not only reauthorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund, but also fully fund it. This is a fund, it is not a tax, it is a revenue. It's a revenue that comes from the revenues of Outer Continental Shelf oil leasing, comes into the Treasury, and then gets reappropriated. This is a way to give back to the nation for taking of a resource that belongs to all of you. So if enacted, this would provide, in the fiscal 16, $47 million for state grants and reauthorizing the Urban Parks and Recreation Program at $25 million. So it would be really fantastic to have that program reappropriated, that we can use it directly into economically distressed urban communities. The Secretary has also announced an ambitious youth initiative that will engage the next generation of leaders and stewards through recreation, education, volunteerism, and employment. So specifically by 2017, we will convene coalitions in 50 cities across the nation to create more opportunities for young people to play, to learn, to serve, and to work outdoors. And somewhere out there, David J.O., you're out there. David, if you'd stand up, there you are. David is serving as the coordinator in the Department of Interior, working with all of us as well. So the 10 cities are part of this overarching effort as well. And we'll be supporting the 50 cities as well through the rest, all of our bureaus in the Department of Interior. And we have very aspirational goals. 10 million kids in outdoor recreation, 10 million educational opportunities in K through 12, 100,000 work opportunities for young people, and 1 million volunteers working on their public lands. And we're getting great support. We've got philanthropic support from American Eagle Outfitters, from Coca-Cola, from North Face, Camelback, and American Express have all thrown in just as starters. So this is a national movement, and I want to invite each and every one of you to join in as well. And the Department of Interior and the National Park Service is incredibly proud to be a partner with all of you and the private sector and the nonprofit sector to put all this together. Last week I was in Austin, Texas with the Children in Nature Network and spent a lot of time with an old friend of mine, Richard Louv, who wrote The Last Child in the Woods. And Rich uses this line that I really like. It says that we need to paint a picture of the future in which our children will want to live. So I think we are entering a very, very exciting and innovative time with mayors and city leaders, business and NGOs, all investing in parks, in new park designs, in restoring our waterways and our lakefronts and our shorelines and our rivers, integrating natural design, integrating green infrastructure with gray infrastructure, and then linking it all at a landscape scale and creating absolutely new ways to engage communities in creating healthy and livable cities. I think it's a fascinating time to be engaged in this, and again, thanks so much to the leadership of the City Parks Alliance to help do this. The Park Service is all in. The Department of Interior is all in to this movement. And it recognizes that we cannot do this alone, that we have a huge opportunity in front of us for the next 100 years. So grab a copy of the Urban Agenda, let us know what you think, and let's work together. Thank you.